the HCI Quals class. I thought I would do this sort of briefly and informally because I'm standing between us and the cake TGIF. So the course will be in the winter. It's going to cover the major parts of human-computer interaction. And we don't assume that you've taken an undergraduate HCI class, but some of you will, so there's a certain balancing that has to happen there. So the coursework is largely about reading papers from the Human-Computer Interaction Conference, computer-supported cooperative work, and so forth. There'll be some little labs and then a group term project in which you'll undertake some sort of study of building a novel interface or a novel interaction technique or studying an existing system. When I taught the course in the past, I've had good luck letting people double dip, where you might explore an interesting interface for some machine learning thing that you're doing in your AI research, or maybe if you're a software engineering person doing HCI systems to better support software engineering or the like, and so that's fine. And then these will generally be term projects. We're fortunate in this university in having a lot of HCI researchers in the area. So Microsoft Research has dozens and dozens of people. In addition, there's HCI that goes on in the Information School, Human-Centered Design and Engineering, and Art and Design. So there's a lot of people to draw from. So I usually have a considerable number of guest speakers coming in talking about a current research topic. And what we'll do is typically read a classic paper and then a current paper from that person or related people, and then dive into that particular area. So tentatively, the list of topics would be computer-supported cooperative work, novel input devices, user interface toolkits and constraints, HCI and software engineering. Andy Coe, for example, in the Information School works on that. Accessibility for blind, deaf folks and others. Richard Gladner, Jacob Wobrock, myself have worked in that area quite a bit. Computing in the developing world and some of the HCI sides of that. Value-sensitive design, which is a design methodology that tries to account for human values in a comprehensive way in the design of technology, and then applying that to HCI questions. That's also something I work on. Crowdsourcing and community sourcing, human performance models and how fast or how accurately can you do things, ubiquitous computing. And then there's probably some stuff on tabletop interaction and cameras, like all the things you can do with Kinect and so forth. There probably won't be room for actually all of these, but I'm going to try to find as many guest speakers and interesting topics as I can. So let's see, so I was going to pause at this point and see if there's any questions about the course, and if not, go into a little more detail about a couple of these topics. But like I said, I know you've been deluged with information, so I wasn't going to deluge with too much more. Anybody got any questions about this? Let me do a quick survey. Of the people that are likely to take the class, how many of you had HCI as an undergraduate? And how many of you haven't had HCI that are likely to take it? Okay. So this is always a bit of a problem balancing that. What I was going to try to do is, obviously can't assume that you've had an undergrad HCI course, but on the other hand, we don't want to devote the whole thing to paper prototyping and heuristic evaluation and those kinds of methods. So I'm going to maybe do just a couple of little labs, or maybe even some optional sections, so that we're on more or less an equal footing. But I don't want to repeat stuff for folks that have already had that. Okay, so I thought maybe I'd just mention a couple of the projects that I work on myself, and then because I'm hoping that at least some of the student projects will center around those. I had a PhD student who graduated last year who built a real-time transit information system called One Bus Away that gets used in this area quite a bit. Many of you may have used it already. So there's actually some pretty interesting HCI questions around in this. One of the things we are currently doing is crowdsourcing finding errors and problems, so that we get about 500 error reports a week of, the bus didn't come, or the stop data is wrong, or the real-time information is wrong, or something like that. And we have been recruiting transit ambassadors to help process this data and interact with the public. And so there's a bunch of questions about, what kinds of systems can they use to put data together and then also coordinate with the agency. It also ties in with the value-sensitive design stuff that I was mentioning, since there are a set of values that we're trying to support in this work. One Bus Away has benefited a lot from having a kind of a feel of a community-supported project. It started out as a couple of grad students at UW building this thing in their spare time, and even after it became Brian's PhD dissertation and Carrie's dissertation, it was kind of more a community project. And we'd like to maintain some of that feel as opposed to having it be this is an official government project, and the stupid government should fix my thing, and why haven't they done it right? So there are these values tensions about community support and accountability, and then agency reputation. On the other hand, they're kind of sensitive about that. And how can we support these different values in the interface and the processes? So that's an example of a question that I'm interested in. And then, this would be a great source for projects in the course. Another research area, again, which would be a good candidate for projects, we've been working in the area of civic participation and online politics. So, as you all know, politics in the US is in kind of a bad state in terms of people listening to each other and having some sort of reasonable dialogue. So we're interested in, well, what are the interface affordances and techniques that will help people listen to each other and consider trade-offs? So we have something called the Living Voters Guide, which we've done in the last couple of elections we're doing in November. And I think this is, again, a rich source of projects of how can you support these values of deliberation and listening and civic engagement. A final thing that I've worked on quite a bit in the past and then stopped for a while was constraint-based systems for user interfaces. So, where a constraint says, here's some sets of relations that need to be satisfied. And this has had a resurgence of late. So a constraint satisfaction algorithm that we build is now the layout manager in OS Lion. And I think there's some interesting user interface toolkit work to be done, much more on the techie side of things. So anyway, I'm happy to take any questions here or informally over cake or as the quarter progresses, and hope to see a bunch of you in the class in the winter. Anybody got any questions at this point?